Okay, so God works in wondrous and weird ways. Back in the summer of 2000, actually the spring of 2004, John got laid off from a job that he really liked that had health insurance and all the good things and paid all the bills and had a savings, and you got to get some stuff, and it was the first time in a long time that we'd been able to have a budget and balance, and all the needs were met, and if you see a need you could meet someone else's need, and it was an amazing time. And then out of the blue, John lost that job. And you have to understand that coming off of that, beforehand, John had a really great job several years before, and then a high-paying job after that. And then because of that, there was a really hard time. The last of those, he was working at a place where he got laid off of because the business downsized, and because of his former wage, no one would hire him for 2 years, and it was really dodgy. Like, he'd go and he'd even apply to places like just anywhere, and they'd look at him and be like, "You're a flight risk. I don't want to hire you. Why would you want to work here?" And he's like, "I have to take care of my family." And they're like, "Good luck with that." And it was really, really hard. So after that, we had Target, and he started as a third shift shipping and receiver and working part-time over at our local hardware store. And that was really the beginning of opportunity. It was hard pulling 2 shifts for anyone who's ever done that, and third shifts especially, but he did his best, and he kept plugging away, and Target really liked him, and so they gave him an advancement and an advancement and an advancement and an advancement, and within a year he was in a really, really good spot. So being let go from there was the weirdest, like, you lost the floor kind of sensation. His personality was really balanced there. He felt appreciated, and that was really, really unfortunate, and it put us in a real tailspin. Like, Lord, what are you doing? And that spring as well, I had lost, or actually that winter, I had lost one of my pillars of my life. My grandmother had passed away, and we just felt like the world had, at that point, just changed. Like, it went from things that made sense to things that just kind of didn't. That too, when we had toddlers, and toddlers don't make sense. They're adorable, but they don't make sense. And so Mom and Dad Downing hired us to come up to Rumney to remove a tree that had landed on a cabin that was behind a trailer on a property that was given to them by a dear, dear friend of ours called Mary. And she was really sweet friends with Mom, and when she passed away of cancer, she left the property to Mom. But unfortunately, while the paperwork was being figured out, the property had to sit in family court for about 5 years, and it got really, 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 really wild. People knew that the trailer was here, but the whole back half of the trailer was covered in sumac, so they only really could see the end of the trailer and the driveway. The field was covered in sumacs. Let me see, about halfway up, and nobody knew. You can see the top of the roof of the house behind. Nobody even knew that the house was back there, so nobody knew that there was a camp down there unless they had been on the property years and years ago. So the cabin was condemned, and they put in the trailer because Mary had disabilities. And right after she passed, like, we went in and did some winterization, and then left it. We weren't supposed to do anything with it, so nobody touched it for a while. And a couple years later, we came in and did some really good cleaning in there with Mom and Dad. And then there was a miscommunication with the 5 people that were helping, and we all thought somebody else was going to come up and shut the water off, and nobody did. So unfortunately, the water ran into the trailer for several months until Mom and Dad got a really horrible electric bill. And so, like, they had to show up in the middle of the winter, and you can see Dad and Matt tried to like break in the back door and get to the water main, shut off that, and Mom was jetted over to the breaker and just shut the electric off on the whole building. And then it sat that way for a couple years. And then we went up to take the tree off of the porch of the cabin behind. Now you have to understand, I was raised by an optimistic parents who love old buildings, and we're always looking at buildings. And my dad's a construction remodeler, restoration. He fixes all the things. And so I grew up with them saying, oh, you can look at that ridge line, you can tell the sill of that building's dipping over there, that's going to need to be replaced. And it's just funny, the info you pick up along the way. And we looked at the cabin, and we're driving up here, and we realized if we were able to gut the cabin, which means just tear everything out of it and fix everything, because I looked at it and said, this looks pretty good. The bones of the structure actually look pretty good. And so we were like, okay, let's talk to Mom and Dad, because if we remodel this, my sweet grandmother had passed away. She left me a chunk of change. There was a check that was given. I never wanted to cash it. My uncle's like, you're gonna mess up the numbers if you don't cash that check. But I felt like if I cashed the check, it would be like the end of grandma, and I didn't want the money. I just wanted my grandma back. So I looked at it and goes, well, maybe this is what that was for. And so we talked to Mom and Dad, and they said, go for it. We have no desire to put in the Herculean amount of work that needs to be done. And they by then had moved to a pastoring job 2 hours away that they were really enjoying, and had no intention of coming back to Rumney. Rumney didn't have a lot of great memories for them at the time. A lot of really good ones, but a couple of really bad ones, so that they didn't really want to come back to this place. So they're like, oh, blessings, mazel tov, go for it. Build a place. And so we, that summer, came, and all of behind me was probably 30 feet of sumac, and this is the house, but we added an extra story on it, and that's a whole other story. It didn't take 3 months that our original plan was, and we were gonna camp in the woods, and then we realized, like, with the rain and stuff and the kids, we decided to turn the first half of this camper into a weatherproof tent, because we knew it wasn't going to be a house. It was better to just be like a temporary shelter. So we moved in there, and the plan was that this 3 months to 6 months hard work John didn't have a job, we had a chunk of cash, the kids were little, we were going to build, we were just going to gut and redo the cabin and have 2 lofts up in there, and we were going to be able to be free. We weren't going to have to worry about being able to pay bills, because if up here, like, we were able to get a job that was going to pay us less, that we would still be able to pay everything. We were just in that place where we wanted to be able to be free. And I mean, even before, when we were looking at rentals, the idea of being able to find a job where you could afford a rental with a 3-bedroom, because we have boys and girls, a lot of times the renters won't let you put both your gendered children in the same room, so you need at least a 3-bedroom apartment. And we were looking at things that would nowhere near our demographic for income, so we were going to have to at least move like halfway across the country. So this was an amazing opportunity, and God just opened the doors. And at any time we tried to do something different, the doors just shut, like, in our face. And it was funny because we were looking at this going, this is kind of crazy, Lord. And he's like, yeah, I'm good for it. And we were like, this is kind of crazy, Lord. And he's like, well, you better get started, because there's a lot of work to be done. And it was funny because, like, that's what my parents and everybody were like, well, that's a lot of work, but it's gonna be cool. And I was like, that's a lot of work. We ended up taking that summer we took 100 construction bags of trash out of the cabin, out of the house, out of the land. There used to be a garage barn here and a big horse barn here that had been burnt or demolished or crushed into the ground at some point in time, and they were full of debris and things when they were destroyed. So there was a lot of cleanup just to find even the earth to start working on things. But the rest of the land back, because it was a horse barn. So when the cabin was here and the horses were here, there's actually, the field is beautiful. There's a side field that's beautiful, and you guys have to see the back drop off. It's about 3.25 acres here. Check this out. We've got the river down there. The sun sets over this area, and it is just gorgeous. We've got a great big sledding hill up over on the other side. We have tent platform set up. We have our bonfire pile. I'm segueing, sorry. Where was I? So, yeah. To wrap up that chapter, we ended up in that half of the trailer for 3.5 years. It cost us $700 to $800 a month in the wintertime to heat it, even with it wrapped in plastic over the windows. We didn't have any running water. The electricity, we've ended up turning on the breaker and started working. And I noticed I wasn't getting a bill for a couple of months, so I called the electric company and goes, "Hey, I owe you money. Where's my bill?" And they're like, "You're not supposed to have electricity. How'd you turn your electricity on?" I'm like, "I just turned it on." They're like, "Oh, someone illegally tampered with your pole." And it was a big misunderstanding, but they came in deep November and shut the electricity off, which was all of our heat. And I'm like, "Hey, this kid's in this building. Please don't do that." And they still did, which I find out now is not something they should have done. But God was really good, and we ended up staying at a friend's house for a week. And we had to pay back the rest of, or it was a group effort and a divine effort to pay back all the rest of the back electricity that was on for that flooding. That was what it was. The address was still tagged for the bill that from when the well exploded, basically. And then we were able to come back here and keep working. And but that's chapter 1, and it gets a little dicey after that. But we had so many friends that came up to help. And I have never worked so hard in my life. We moved our chickens up here right away, and the woman who rented our house we rented our house down in Fitzwilliam from was amazing. And they were able to find a renter right away, so we didn't even have to stay for the rest of the month. We didn't have to pay for the rest of the month. We were able to go ahead and come right up here. My parents watched the kids, John's folks watched the kids, and we pulled all mornings to all nighters, and we didn't have running water here, so we went and we showered in the river. oh my gosh. So quick story, and then I'll go, because this video is getting long, and then we'll do another one. So we got up here, right? And then here, let me see, right behind me, you see the space between the house and the trailer, where there's this, let me say, where the cart is. Well, we ended up putting a giant, depth perspective, there's a little off, so there's more space there than it looks, but not a whole lot. We barely carved out enough trees and sumacs, and we kept pulling them and piling. We were just trying to get the driveway back. We tried to clean it out around the cabin so that we could actually even look at the side of it to see if it was worth it. And we put this giant pile of sumacs there and debris and the tree that we pulled off of the cabin's roof. And we put, like, so that we have the giant pine tree, we've got all this stuff. It was the biggest burn pile I've ever done. My dad and I, my dad was forest ecology as well, so I grew up doing bonfires in the woods. So I'm like, yeah, bonfires, I got this. And John's crazy. He's like, yeah, giant bonfire. What could go wrong? And so we had a burn permit, and we lit that darn thing, and it was so hot. There's only a few times where I was really fearful that I'd lost control of a bonfire, and that was it. No, seriously, it was a really good thing I had like a really short pixie haircut, because I'm pretty sure I would have lost what other hair I had. I know I singed the edge of my eyebrows and my eyelashes, and because nobody had been here for so long, the whole town was called. Like, the whole town called the fire department. And luckily the first person to show up was somebody that was very dear to us that we knew. And he's like, do you have this? Are you ready with this? Do you have this? And he helped us make sure that we were doing everything the way we were supposed to, because then the rest of the fire department, which is a really fantastic volunteer fire department, showed up one by one, and that was our introduction to the town, with like the entire fire department coming in and the whole town calling and being like, someone's toasting the buildings over on this and such a road. And they thought for sure that like someone just came and arsonied it had burnt both the buildings. And there's John and I like, hi, how are you? And we had a note from Mom that said these kids have permission, we're not really kids, but permission to do work on the property and stuff like that. And it was really funny. I was like, hey guys, if I'd known you guys would come, I would have made brownies instead of a bonfire. And I thought for sure we were just going to be in so much trouble, but it was such a hilarious, like, positive experience after we didn't lose the bonfire and it didn't actually burn all the buildings, and we got to meet all the guys, and we all had a good laugh, and it worked out, and we're alive, and we still have the stuff now. Now this is kind of funny. This is gross, but as I show you, we actually, if you look along this top edge here, and you see it starts to warp right there, and then it goes back to nice, like, well, it's symmetrical up there at the top of the roof line. Symmetrical, melted. That was the bonfire. Yeah, so they were really funny. They're like, yeah, from here on, how about if you make your bonfires smaller and a lot further away from the buildings? And we're like, okay, that's a great idea. Oh my gosh, so funny. Not funny. God is good. We're still alive. We still have buildings. We were trying to be responsible. We weren't trying to be hooky pook, and like, we knew it was going to be a monster, but oh my gosh. It was like one of those things looking back where you're like, the things we do. All right, stay tuned for the next chapter. That was kind of wordy. Until then, have a good one.